Okay, ready. Started this.
Oh, I did? Oh, the person.
Yeah.
Person. Oh, great. Pretty
simple.
The recommended servings of every day. It's because it can be difficult to prepare that much produce.
One page of preference.
This one, it's bringing back.
And just those ones don't feel like out.
Oh,
Just one.
okay, so it's 6:30. I'd like to call this meeting of the Charter Review Commission to order. And ask Michael to take the attendance.
Robert Brennan,
Here,
Scott Copley,
Here.
Scott Guthrie,
Here.
Jim Humphrey. Here. Brad Mayer. Here. Ben Perra.
Here.
Sarah Repose,
Here.
Michael Stevens, I'm present, and Ted Tracy.
Here.
And Ray Angel.
Present.
Okay. Has everybody had a chance to read the minutes from May 11th and May 18th?
yes.
Yes.
Are there any corrections? Scott, Sarah, did you get to read them?
I did. Mike, I do want to abstain from them just because I wasn't present for the meeting.
Okay.
Please.
Yep, okay.
Thank you.
So
Yes.
I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Make a motion to approve May 11th and 18th minutes.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, so moved. Okay, item 5, executive session per Rhode Island General Law 42-46-5A4. Closed pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 42-46-5A4. Any investigative proceedings regarding allegations of misconduct, either civil or criminal. The entire commission is here tonight. I'd like to request a motion to convene into executive session.
Because we have a participant on Zoom that is not a member of the executive session, my only option is to cut off the Zoom participants.
You can do that until all of them, or
And
just,
do you have the option
I
of
don't
just
have-
putting that person in the waiting room?
I don't think so, because does anyone know how to create a private room that?
Yeah, I've not done that before.
Yeah, I don't know. You have to set up a waiting room.
Unless Scott, Sarah and Rick is dialing. We'll call maybe.
and Sarah.
Yeah, if we could have Scott, Sarah, and Ray call something, 3 different phone numbers.
Okay,
I don't have service. Hey, well,
Yeah, it's
Ray,
Scott.
Sarah, and Scott, if you could all email me your phone numbers right now,
We'll
then I
call
can just have a different person do it. We'll cut off.
And what's your
B
cell
Marchand,
phone number? Maybe I,
B
oh,
Marchand.
okay. Never mind. I got it. I see what you're saying.
So,
I was gonna text it to you.
Can we use a real phone?
oh, I could probably conference them. Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Because there is
Yeah.
nothing in here.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, is that right?
Let's
Smart.
use that.
if you want to pass it over.
All right, I'm gonna stop the Zoom feed for, well, once you take your
Yeah.
votes, you have to vote. For the executive session.
We have one. If no one moved to go to executive session, I will make that motion.
Motion is made, is there a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote, please.
Robert Brennan,
Here, yes.
Scott Copley,
Yes.
Scott Guthrie,
Yes.
Jim Humphrey,
Yes.
Brad Mayer,
Yes.
Ben Perra,
Yes.
Sarah Repose,
Yes.
Michael Stevens, I vote yes, and Ted Tracy.
Yes.
Okay.
We're back in regular session as are we done with the conference call?
Yes.
Right.
So now I need a motion to seal the minutes of the executive session.
I move to seal the minutes of the executive session.
Seconded. Motion made and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Robert Brennan,
Yes.
Scott Copley,
Yes.
Scott Guthrie,
Yes.
Jim Humphrey,
Yes.
Brad Mayer,
Yes.
Ben Para,
Yes.
Sarah Repose,
Yes.
Michael Stevens, I vote yes, and Ted Tracy.
Yes.
So moved. The Coventry Charter Review Commission convened an executive session pursuant to Rhode Island General Laws 46.5A4 to discuss any investigative proceedings regarding allegations of misconduct, either civil or criminal. Discussion took place. No votes were taken. Thank you, Ben, by the way. Okay. Whole business,
I wasn't even thinking of anything.
old business, Jim.
Hello. So what we would like to do tonight is, as I said in our last meeting, is we have a presentation our subcommittee put together to walk through our proposal to improve public input to the budget decision process, specifically sections 8.16, 8.18, and 8.19. Ray, are we listed any sections, Ted? Ray? I think we caught them all, right?
I think that's all.
I believe so.
Let me tell you what you have in front of you, and the folks on the phone have another little package. I'll get to you later. I haven't digitized it yet. So so you know what's in front of you is the presentation that I will walk through, and others will chime in as we walk through this presentation on the purpose and intent of this proposal. And what this is, let's call it, you can write it on here, Jim's Musings. But what it is kind of a high level graphic. I'll tell you what that is in a moment. I think it's a good thing to look at. Just some backup data where we got some of our metrics, how we computed them on the next page. And then I took a stab at what a petition might even look like. It's just kind of a mock-up. Kind of help us think through the process. We may not get to that, but it's a food for thought. Ultimately, these artifacts are going to be created by, as if this proposal moves forward, gets the ballot and is approved, the town government will be putting this together.
It's in this packet.
Yeah, the petitions are in this packet. Because I'll talk to that as I go through the presentation, but it's just backup for now. I'll reference it as I go through it. Okay.
Another one of those.
Yeah, which one?
The
Second one?
one with the bars.
You have another one?
I do. Pick up one. I left a couple on the seat for Ray over there, but Ray's not here. Hey, Ray, you see, I left them right in your seat for you. Right over, they're right over there, your copies. All right. Okay, so I'll take it from the top and, thanks to Ray and Ted and Brad and Bob for helping with this, and they'll chime in at different sections, okay? Let's go to the first slide of this package, just so everybody sees which one it is, okay? If I can get to that page, my fingers don't work anymore. So really, the purpose of this specific proposal for the budget process, restore the public's ability to modify the town budget. Ironically, tomorrow's our big referendum ballot, all day vote. Create a measured responsible process to provide public input. Can't just say no. Eliminate existing fiscal uncertainty in the current referendum process, which we saw exhibited a couple of years ago, where they voted no. I mean, when you vote no and extend the budget process, you're hurting the planning process and probably a lot of other things as well. So it's important to have some certainty with what you can plan and what you'll be able to, upcoming fiscal year. I'm going to just talk to this real quickly too, because let me go to the next slide. I think that's important. So it is pages are numbered, so it's page 3. So our proposal is to add 2 new public input processes, really using a petitioning mechanism. So the first petitioning mechanism would be after a provisional town council budget, but we looked at the current process. So there's been hearings about the budget, a whole heck of a lot of work. A lot of those things don't change. Is done. And then any qualified elector of the town may circulate what is considered a line item level petition to request the council to consider increases or decreases for specific line item budget expenditures. It might be a new idea. You know, I was talking earlier, maybe we fix the welcome to Coventry sign, or maybe there's a DEM investigation on a pond or a swamp, or ideas that the folks have. And with our research, we've done a lot of work talking to us. So Kingstown, we talked to Kingstown management, we've done a lot of research. That's has seemed to prove to be helpful to the town council with new ideas that they can consider, but they don't have to use them. This is something just for consideration. The school budget changes can only be done at the total budget level. You know, as we know, the school budget has guidelines and guardrails and restrictions on how we can approach that. What's important for both of these two petition processes is they will first be vetted by the town management. In other words, you've met the guidelines, you know, they will get guidelines from the town management. They need to know the guardrails and rules of the budget. You need to understand the budget a little bit. So they'll be guided, making sure that the 20 signatures that they get are validated by the Board of Canvassers, making sure they're doing things right. In fact, before they even go get signatures, provide what you're going to do, who's going to do it, you know, just to help them and guide them. I think that's very, very important. On the next slide, so that's what happens at that juncture in the timeline of the budget process. The second item is very important. Following and we're calling it a final approved town council budget. Verbiage is important. Any qualified, so we've gone through the line items. They've been approved, used, not used by the town council. Now a final budget, you know, that people are voting on tomorrow, for example, is done. And at that juncture, and it's the final budget, any qualified elector of the town may circulate a budget referendum petition, affectionately calling it a BRP. We could use another acronym, to increase or decrease the town council budget, and this is important, by at least 0.2%. We're trying to future-proof this. For example, that'd be like $229,000, a minimum increase or decrease in a proposed budget, the final budget. The verified budget referendum petitions would then trigger, again, same thing, vetted with town clerk, town management. Before you go get these signatures, let's make sure you're following the guidelines and the guardrails that you really need to know. Good example, I talked to the school superintendent today. You know, I understand there's, you know, maintenance of effort. There are percentages that need to be met. There are guidelines, particularly with the school budget, that need to be taken into consideration. So there are guardrails at the top and the bottom of what you could propose. Verified BRPs will trigger a budget referendum hearing, because at that hearing, now that it's been verified that your petition is valid, you've gotten all your signatures, you know, we want a hearing so people can understand what you're proposing. At the same time, the town will also rediscuss what its final town council budget was and why it was done. So everybody's informed. After that hearing, there would be an all-day budget referendum by ballot, just as we're doing today, but only if all that work is done and it's verified and validated. And you'll notice too, I think I mentioned the budget amount, but also it's 2% of the qualified electors are required as signatures on that petition. That's roughly about 500 signatures today. Okay. Questions so far? So what's on slide 5 is an illustrative, is an example of what our ballot. Remember, this goes to the town council, this idea to be approved. Then it goes to the ballot, hopefully. And this is roughly what it would look like. The language here jives with the language that Ted and Ray have been working on, the actual language in the charter, and we'll talk about that in a moment as well. Again, as I said, line item level electors, required 20 qualified signatures. We targeted April 1st. So, you know, electors as of April 1st, you need a point in time because it's a moving target. That's what we recommended. And then item 2, a budget referendum petition, 2% of qualified electors, a minimum add or subtract of 0.2% of the final town council budget with a hearing and all-day referendum ballot. If that is verified and validated. So you can imagine that at that referendum, there would be approve the town council final budget, approve an adjustment to the budget. If there's another referendum, said one that could be an increase, you pick one, the town council budget, or one or two adjustments or more to the budget. All petitions was follow, and I just added this because I talked to the school superintendent, federal and Rhode Island general law, and may not decrease the tax levy from the previous fiscal year. A lot of detail under that, which would be laid out in the guidelines of the petition. You can imagine there'll be a petition template, which in this other package, I kind of took a crack at. Proposed timeline, let's hit these bullet points, and then Brad's been working on a proposed timeline. We know ultimately that the town will lay out the timeline. What's important to note is ensures each potential petition effort has adequate time, is fair to the petitioner, and allows enough time to verify the petitions. Recommends that petitioners are provided guidance and guidelines for the budget changes they're requesting to ensure the petition is valid before requesting electoral signatures. Line item petitions should be recognized, reviewed, and voted on by the town council during regular sessions. I'll turn it over to Brad. He's going to hit the highlights on that timeline.
So I pretty much took this year's timeline and added in all the steps that we want to add in. With taking into account time needed to verify petition signatures and give council time to review the line item petitions. It basically adds about a month to the process, but it's still, if any of the referendum petitions are submitted and when it triggers the hearing and all-day referendum ballot, we pretty much only have one benchmark date that it needs to be done by the 4th Thursday of the month of June. So that'll be done before the next fiscal year starts. And it only says before then. If the council or town manager wants to make that beforehand, they're ultimately responsible with the calendar. The only hard date that we're throwing in is the 4th Thursday in June is when the potential all-day referendum needs to be.
The latest it could.
Yeah, the latest it could be. Yeah.
The next slide, slide 8, pros and cons. I'm going to turn it over to Bob to walk through that.
Okay, with everything that we're doing, we're starting out with the classic sheet of pad of yellow paper with a cross on the top and pros and cons, pros on one side, cons on the other. Nothing that gets presented is going to be heavier on the cons than it is on the pros, because otherwise why would we be presenting it? So the pros that are associated with this particular ballot question would be that the actual town budget development process, what the work that goes into putting that budget together remains basically the same. None of this kicks in until after that point is reached. The public retains the ability to review the budget prior to any adoption. The public retains the opportunity to provide input into the budget by public comment and after the budget hearing by the petitions. It has the potential of saving additional costs to the town for not triggering budget referendum hearings which are currently the required town financial meetings, or an all-day referendum by ballot currently a requirement. Additionally, it ensures it'll be at most one all-day referendum. So if the budget is adopted without a challenge, that's the budget. If the budget is adopted with a challenge, it goes to an all-day referendum. That addresses multiple section 8.18 town council suggested areas for changes in the town charter. Following the adoption of the budget by the town council, the public has the right to make modifications by petition. Still not the final deal. If there's a challenge to it, public can still go up and come up with an alternative budget. The town electors retain the final approval over which budget is adopted, so nobody's giving away anything. The need to revise the budget, hold additional financial town meetings, additional all-day referenda, along with the associated expenses if the proposed budget is not adopted, is eliminated. There's a defined endpoint to the budget process. Restores the elector's ability to modify the budget prior to adoption and eliminates fiscal uncertainty of potential multiple day referenda by ballot. The downside of it, it adds steps to the current process, so it does make it a little bit more complicated. There is a potential of increasing the amount of work required to push this through, with the Board of Canvassers having to verify signatures and such. The budget process is extended by approximately a month. And there may be additional cost to the town to process the petitions. Overall, you're still dealing with a lot more pros to the process than the cons to the process, so this is why we're moving forward with it.
And I can emphasize that endpoint too, because even if we go to the referendum, it's either going to be the town budget or, you know, an adjustment to the town budget. And that's it. There's not another one. There's not another vote. Okay, we actually, so Ray and Ted poured through the proposed charter language. So let Ted hit we can just hit highlights. That's
Yeah,
it.
I'm not gonna.
We can't walk through all this.
So right now, 8.16, which deals with the preparation budget, is mostly the same, except we're adding the sections to allow for the line item petitions for that. The big change comes in 8.18, which is adoption of the budget. Right now, basically striking everything that's in there, all references to the all-day referendum, all references to the financial town meeting, moderator, all that stuff is being taken out. And basically put in our new language that says, town council has adopted a budget, you can circulate a petition. Again, as we mentioned earlier, this one, because we wanted a higher threshold, but we also wanted to be, future-proof. Instead of saying a fixed amount of electors, we set it to 2% of the electors on April 1st of that year, and we said the change up, down, reallocation, go from A to B or whatnot, had to be at least 0.2%. So that way, whatever those numbers go forward, because I remember back when the old system of a financial town meeting, it was like the most you could change there without a referendum was 100,000 for the longest time. And even though the budget kept going up, that was always until they changed it again finally. If there is a petition, now you will have a hearing for that fact. That would be run very similar format to the financial town meeting. We're just not calling it that because it's basically presentation of the alternative versus the town proposed budget. Give each side an opportunity to explain what could change if either proposal is adopted. The ballot is described in here that it's going to be a one question ballot where you have your town council approved budget and the alternatives, they're going to state, basically let you know what was changed and what is the adjusted outcome. So that way you can read it and understand it pretty simply. What are you voting for? And then with some technical language, and the last one was 8.19 because there was a clause at the end that referred to a special financial town meeting. Since we're taking that out, we're changing that to the town council boards. 8.19 is the last section out. Okay.
Yeah, so bottom line, we've improved the public's input, but it's got to be targeted, validated with some precision and thought to be able to do it with, appropriate signatures from the town. And I'll talk about this little page first. I thought it was interesting. Jim's Musings now, not official anything, but I created what I call a continuum, electors' participation in the budget process continuum. And just what I've learned here and what I've read and what I've seen so far living in Coventry, left to right, left is like where I lived in Attleboro, town council, the council approved the budget. We represent you, they're your representatives. The second item is there's a lot of discussion. I've seen some towns have finance and budget committees that really do a lot of work in the budget, and the council approves that. Petitioning, I guess I kind of see, like, my thinking is it's kind of a happy medium. It's more precise, there's more precision, there's a process to it, but it's well thought out. It's not just yes or no. It's like, here's something we'd like to change, and here you have to lay it out. You have to do the math a little bit to do that. You have to get people to support it. ahead of time before it becomes a ballot question, before the town invests time and effort and all the voters in the town of Coventry can go and vote on something. Then there's where we're at today. We have a financial town meeting for informational purposes to understand the budget, followed by the all-day budget referendum, which is tomorrow. You approve it or reject it. Reject it, you do it again. Reject it, you do it again. Then you get to a point where you need to move the town along. I think we level set the budget a few years ago, not optimal. And then where we were, and Ted and I was talking about a financial town meeting where you're in person, you do same day amendments, they're voted on, a show of hands, approve or reject the process. It lasts hours and hours and hours in a gymnasium. And the last two in that continuum, less reliance on representation, but as we've experienced low voter turnout, you only have so many people in the gym voting on things. We're trying to engage the public better and in a more precise manner, I think. So I thought it was kind of a clever little graphic. You can tell me what you think at another time. The second page is the backup data where we got those metrics for 2% of the voters and 0.2% of the budget. And then if you go beyond that page, what you'll see, bless you, is there somebody's not feeling well? Somebody's not feeling, yeah, it is allergy season, believe me. So what you'll see, and the pagination kind of gets a little messed up, but you'll see guidelines and instructions. I'd hope to mock something like that up, and we may still do something like that. So you get a template petition document to use. This is for the budget referendum. This is after a final town budget has been approved by the town council. And you'll see on the second page, there are 2 pages on each one of these slides. So see what I'm looking at here. And you'll see that the undersigned, and this was from, I got a lot of these ideas from Tiverton's ballot process. The undersigned qualified electors in town of Coventry, they always vetted the people who are going to do the work to get the signatures, to make sure the guidelines were very clear before they went out and did a lot of work, and what the intent of what their budget change is going to be. Here it's to reduce the real estate property tax burden. Hopefully maybe a little bit more than that. On the next page, again, which we saw in other towns, show us what the appropriation is going to be, show the impact on the tax levy, do some of the math, but I think we can template a lot of this, and you can see that there's a petition document they can use to get the signatures and make sure it's printed and done the right way with guidance and footnotes on it. And then certification of the Board of Canvassers on subsequent pages. And then this was my idea, Jim's musings, okay? And I've seen this in other towns where if you scroll down, like the Tiverton petition, they gave them the budget, but they may have given them a worksheet. And if they wanted to change something, it allowed them to kind of make their changes, compute what the result would be, give them a sense of what they were doing. So they just fill in the numbers and get a final number that they could put on the first sheet, but some detail over here. So my thinking is it would be nice to kind of set up a worksheet for people so they know what they're doing instead of just throwing a number out there. They can just plug it in. They say, we want to decrease that to be able to do that. If they stay within the budget, we want to decrease that to reduce the tax. Things like that. They would see the result and the impact on the tax levy, knowing they have to stay within guidelines to 4%. They would see the impact of that right away on a worksheet. Again, just my idea. And then there's another petition I had here, petition number 3, where increase the school budget by decreasing the municipal budget. You got to explain what you're doing in some way. So those are just some mock-ups just to get us thinking. And that's it. So I know we're trying to get to motions on these things. What does everybody think? What does everybody think before I say this?
First and foremost, I just want to say thank you for all the hard work you put into that. I mean, this was really thorough and complete, and it looks great. Thank you. I think the only thing that I would be concerned about is the timeline. And in my limited capacity knowing about taxation, I try to stay out of that. I do know that in Coventry, I believe our first quarter is July 15th. if I'm not mistaken. So I think having a deadline the fourth week of June might be problematic for our tax assessor to set the rolls and get the tax bills out in time. I don't know if someone else more educated on that topic could weigh in.
Well, the tax bills go out the first week of July, so. Yeah, to Brad's point, having a deadline would be something that as administration, we'd want to stay as far away from as possible. So the deadline is a little too late for that practical logistics of getting the tax bills out on time. But I think that's almost a logistical challenge rather than a charter question.
Right.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
as long as
So
the
I think that
charter
making it,
language isn't prescribing the schedule.
No.
It's
No,
saying
it's
that
the
you're going
later.
to do these things.
no later, a
Yeah.
referendum would be held no later than the fourth Thursday of June, which is basically saying this is the latest it could be. If you want it to happen on June 1st, that's totally within,
Sooner the better.
perfect,
right.
good. And it gives them that flexibility. I like that. Thank you.
But it was just more of like, if absolutely necessary, it's still gonna be done before the fiscal year ends, the next year begins, but
And there's the option, if that doesn't provide enough time, is to shift everything.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
2 weeks
can-
earlier. On a timeline, really,
which can be done. We don't,
there's nothing prohibiting that.
I mean, the timeline was just a thought process to see how it
It's
would work.
illustrative, yeah.
Exactly.
I have a question.
Yeah, no, I think it's a good example to kind of show them how that would, fall into place. But I mean, is this something that we're looking to vote on? Because I think a lot of us are in agreement on this one. I don't know how you feel about that, Scott.
The only other thing that I'd like to see incorporated with it is, we're trying to engage the voter to try to get more voter participation. And how do you feel about having early voting
or absentee
Say-
voting.
or absentee, maybe not so much absentee, but if you have a rainy night or something and Mrs. McGillicuddy doesn't like going out in the rain to vote on that day, she might be able to go to the Board of Canvass's office and cast a ballot there. Like I said, if we're trying to engage
We already have that now, and that's not really part of it.
for budget referenda,
I don't think you have it
You
for the
vote
budget.
today or
referendum.
tomorrow.
No, but again, that would also be a separate.
well, I personally would like to see it written into this so that any budget referenda allow for 3,
early
4,
voting.
5 business days of early voting. Some people don't like to come out at night. If you want to know the will of the people, make it easy for them to vote. And give them every opportunity to vote, within reason, so to speak.
I think that's a good idea.
I think it's a good idea.
I think something reasonable. I just wouldn't, do it like we do with state law right now, because I don't want them to get into a situation where it's now a cost to the taxpayers to facilitate that. I know right now for early voting, we hire poll workers, the whole 9 yards, and that costs money. So I think that even if you gave them an extra day or something along those lines, I can agree with that. I just wouldn't want to do the full. I
Well, I
wouldn't want to
think-
make it cumbersome.
I think a ballot machine in the Board of Canvass's office for 3 days isn't going to be a huge cost. The clerk is there, the machine is there. The ballots are printed. She just has to certify who it is and goes to ballot.
And since it's not a state election, we can kind of modify it that way, right? Maybe.
I don't know enough about the referendum and. Board of
It's not
Canvassers.
an election. It's not an election. It's a
Right,
referendum.
it's not a Title 17 election. However, I mean, is the average voter going to feel comfortable with one person autonomously accepting votes and not having another witness there?
We've done it.
What's that?
I mean, that's how I voted. I went to the Board of Canvassers and voted early for the school committee election.
Yeah.
Was Sheen there? She was there. Everything was, ID was verified, and voted.
Right, so it was only one person working?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's actually against the law, but okay.
That might
That
be
is a
against
Title
election
VII. That
law,
was
but
a
it's
Title
not.
VII.
So that might be against election law, but I'm reasonably certain that it's not against the local referenda.
Not for
valid.
local well, for a Title 17 election it is, but anyway, I don't want to get into that. I just want to make sure that we don't do anything that's going to be prohibitive to the town, that's all.
Who can provide a definitive answer to that? Would that be the Board of Canvassers or,
Yeah,
or your?
I can check with
Yeah,
Lori and.
I'd check with the Board of
Let's check.
Canvassers, and my only other thought is not commingling the process of the Board of Canvassers with, you know, section, the
Yeah.
section. If there's another section that it would be more appropriate to have it in, that would make more sense, but I understand what you're trying to get at, and I have no problem with making elections easier and
Yeah,
accessible.
I'm gonna second that, and I was someone who was affected for almost 8 years on these things, because I was always out of town when the budget referendum came up. I don't think in this section is a place for that. I think it's a great idea. I would love to have that. But I don't think in this particular process, I agree. I think it should be either a different section of the charter or in a statute or someplace else that would allow it on referendum to do the early voting. I think that would be an excellent idea.
But
I
if
still
the
think that's
question
place
is
for
we
it.
have the flexibility to do it now, then we can just do it now administratively, and it doesn't need to be in the charter.
I'm definitely in favor of early voting and allowing access to bring out more votes. But I don't like doing so at the cost of one person watching overseeing the actual voting. We may as well just have a WB Mason box and some duct tape.
Well,
Well, I mean,
They're there.
They're
in the
there.
office. It's in their office. They're there.
the board of
anyhow.
canvassers are there, so.
Sure.
Is it two there? Is there an assistant to? Lori?
Six.
Only during election?
If we end up having.
Yeah, we have 3 days
hi-
that
We
two people need
do
to be
hire
here.
people for the elections and poll workers and in fact, because the current clerk of the Board of Canvassers has plans to retire in a few years, we're going to be staffing up ahead of the next presidential election so that we will have 2 people in the office, but once the retirement happens, it's presumed to go back down to 1, so.
Having access to more voting is great, but if the people aren't going to trust the process, that's what worries me.
Right.
Yep.
But I think it's totally possible. I mean, as long as there's 2 people in that office, especially for a budget referendum, to do some early voting for a few days or a week isn't going to cost anything extra. It's if you have to hire anyone to facilitate it would be where the cost would come.
Or reassign somebody for 3 or 5 days.
And that's not gonna be
and
such a
the person
huge
who's there is really just, they're not doing the voting. They're not taking the ballot and putting it in the machine.
No, they're certifying you,
They're
and
checking
you
your
can still
ID.
walk up to the machine. Still-
Yeah, they're certifying
that
that
you're-
are.
Certifying you're a registered voter?
Right.
Put it in the
Right.
machine.
If we only have one person in
Oh.
the tax collection office, they're still gonna take your tax payments. and
That's right.
Probably a much higher risk than a vote, but.
Right?
They're
I
important.
just had a question, really to the town manager, I think. How is it codified now that it happens?
I don't know.
Okay,
I'd
okay,
have to ask.
okay, because you're right, there's nothing in the charter that references that, so it's gonna be by some other way.
Well,
And
they follow whatever guidelines the Board of Elections, and they follow the state almost to everything. They get the election machines from the state. All their rules follow the state, and so the question about the difference between a budget referendum from a Title 17 election, I don't know where those guidelines come from, if they're just informal or if they're actually rules that were voted on and adopted by the Board of Canvassers themselves or the town council. Maybe there's a resolution or an ordinance, I don't know.
okay,
Yeah, usually it's depicted in your charter to the process. But in
Good
this
question.
case, you're right, it doesn't get super specific.
But I think that's a good idea. This early voting could be a separate thing because not only with regards to the budget referendum, it could be with regards to bonding and other things that we do vote on at the town, you can catch all that
Mhm.
in another section
No.
of the charter, I think.
So since we're going in that direction of maybe suggesting that, what are your thoughts on mail ballots as well,
Article 2.
allowing for mail ballots?
You'd have to, what do we
You have to
do?
request a mail ballot by mail. And I'm not trying to be silly on
I'm
it,
not-
because
I'm
it's
not
like,
gonna-
if you can come, if you're coming into town to request a mail ballot, we'll just vote while you're here. I guess
Special election.
Right, it's more like an absentee ballot,
Right.
but, I don't know how it's done here. I know, like, voting by mail on top of our current system would be extremely expensive. However, having lived in Oregon where they exclusively vote by mail for all elections, I loved it because I got my ballot, 90 days before the election, and I could drop off my ballot at any time I wanted when I was done researching and filling it out, and then I dropped it off at the county elections lockbox. But it's a different system, so if you were gonna,
and they're used to it.
well, they weren't the first time, but it's
They got used to it.
They got used to it.
Don't you always have to have a mail option? Because there's always a military person or somebody. Does that work for the town as well as it does for state and federal elections? Because it exists already.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah,
not
most
Before
more-
towns
moving to
don't-
Rhode Island, I never had anything to do with elections because it was always
Okay.
a county function, so I don't. know.
Okay.
There,
I think all this can be researched and be somewhere else and added because
it
it's
could
good.
be, it could be sent.
It's a great idea.
Could be put into the election section of the. charter.
Yeah,
Sarah, you were gonna say something?
I'm sorry, I completely lost my train of thought. I think that mail ballots currently aren't really, mail ballots and early voting aren't really offered for town budgets, but I don't think it'd be prohibited.
so I just keep thinking, what if there's a very important election that has to occur and it's December and you're on the outskirts of District 1 in the middle of nowhere and you're stuck. I mean, you can't come and vote. I mean, that's the worst thing that we have. It probably wouldn't be a lot of people. I don't think.
I mean,
It'd be very few.
voting by mail would be like voting absentee.
Right.
You'd have to
Same thing.
notify the board of canvassers in advance that I'd like my ballot mailed to me. Well, if you know
Right.
you're not gonna be
Right,
there,
right.
you might as well come in and early vote absentee or whatever. So
Right.
they're two different methods that get to the same outcome.
If you all agree that it might be better suited in a different part of the charter, such as elections, then I'll check with Billy Marcotte, see how he thinks about it. He's the chairperson of
Yeah,
the Board of
Yeah.
Elections, and see what they think and whether we could add,
Yeah.
budget referenda under elections instead of in this.
Yeah. I think it's a good idea.
If I could
Just
just,
trying to say, I'm just trying to make,
Mhm.
make it easier for people to participate. That's,
Yeah.
we've been
sure.
saying that we've been stuck in this vote no on everything in town for the last 3 or 4 years and, making it easier for people to vote, I think is probably, a little bit better.
That's a good idea. Agreed.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
we're gonna talk about shortly 2.01. And it probably could be in that section because it talks about that the election laws of the state of Rhode Island are followed for elections, special, general, primary. If you add in a sentence and it shall include the Coventry budget process or budget referendum, I think you accomplish what it is that you're looking for unless that's cost prohibitive.
okay. So, Jim, the floor is yours.
So, seeing consensus here, I'd like to make a motion to move the discussed additions and changes to Article
Section 8.
8, sections 8.16, 8.18, and 8.19 to add line item level electors petition process after completion of the town council provisional budget, and to add a budget referendum petition process after the town council approves a final budget. Really want to second that motion?
I'll second that.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there any more discussion?
The only thing that I would add, when these go forward, we should probably, not probably, we should put a little asterisk or note on all of these that the language may end up being changed by the town clerk to be consistent with, you know, Coventry's policies or whatever the case may be. This, you know, may not be the exact final language, just so they know that that's a possibility.
Okay.
Got
Sort of a
it.
general disclaimer.
Yeah, that's much better put than I just did.
Okay, so now, here we are. And when we were first meeting, we thought that we would do updates for the council. Is this part of that? Do you want Ben to give them an update on this, hand this to them and say, they'd like to know how you feel about it, because they want you to they want, you know, us to put it there. We want them to pass it. So working together, we can get it on the ballot, because we have other things we're going to talk about on how things get put on the ballot.
I agree with that.
You agree with that, Ben?
Dude, what do you guys think?
I think we should send it to them and get some feedback before we make a final determination of what we're going to ultimately be our presentation to them.
Yes, I agree. I like to get some feedback from them to see what their thought process is on this stuff. Just to kind of gauge how they're reacting to it, and then we can tweak things as we go. Because this is the first thing we're going to be putting to them, correct? That they're going to be seeing from us.
This is
will be.
the first item that we'd like to.
Yeah,
Remind you that something very, very similar was proposed in the last charter review. And there was a motion made and it wasn't seconded, so it died right there. So,
okay.
so this is very close to that, and maybe it'll assuage the feelings of some of the other people on the council. They'll have something to read in their hands. And if they want to add input, we certainly would look forward to it. And I'm pretty sure that one of the council persons would like to see the early voting thing on that, because I've been contacted about it. So the motion is made and seconded. All in favor?
I
Hi.
We'll do aye. We're not going to do a roll call on this. We're going to do
No.
ayes. Are there any nays? No, there are not. So move.
Question of clarification, was that motion just for bullet one, because you read that one, or was it intended to include all?
I read bullet one and I read bullet two, just the
Okay.
first sentences of it, because that's really the two key things.
Okay,
I didn't read the whole thing.
But it's for the,
But I would feel free
to send the whole thing.
to send that,
I'll share.
Yes,
that.
in the packet.
to send it, both of these packets.
That's separate from the motion. That's direction from the charter. Review
Yeah.
Commission.
So-
Let me tighten this up,
Okay.
send it to you. With their feedback, that'd be great.
So, you know, hopefully they'll agree with a system that's desperately needed, something that invites a little more public participation and sets the budget easier than spending budgets that get rejected time and time again.
Sure. I expect we'll get some good questions and some ideas.
Okay,
Thanks.
Can I just, the motion that was made and passed is for the Charter Review Commission to approve this in its current form. And then ultimately it's going to get sent to the town council for review, correct?
Yeah, for an initial review, not a formal vote.
I'm not sure that it's necessary to make a big distinction, since a recommendation from the charter review is a recommendation. It's going to be subject to the vote of the council, potential changes by the town clerk, board of canvassers, whatever it is. But I think it's clear what you're recommending for changes. And I'll share that with the council and get their feedback, so that if they have any questions that you would like to further refine your recommendation with,
Right,
that could be helpful.
because they may come back and say, if you could just adjust that or add that, that would be very helpful. And we're
Yeah.
working together.
Exactly.
perfect.
That sounds good. Thanks.
6.2, section 306, 403, 403, filling vacancies. Ted,
So after last week and hearing no further input on if we end up if there's an approved change that puts us back in the partisan realm. Consensus of the group was not to put a clause that if there's a vacancy in either town council or school committee, it had to be necessarily filled with the same party. I am back here with the same proposal I had from last time, which I reformatted into the strike through. But it is, again, what I presented before, if there's a vacancy year with less than a year left, there's not a special election, town council will fill it. If it's within a year of election, town council appoints, but we have a special election for any remaining term after that. We're not in any of those timeframes. You have a special election, or if you can't hold one before the next state election, you have a special election. But basically, both committees, if there's a vacancy, there will be an appointment to fill the seat within 30 days, and then ensures that at most, the appointed person serves for up to a year. And then still allows the people of that district the opportunity to vote for a permanent person. Is there any feedback from that? This is what it's from last time, so. Sorry.
you take out, did you take out, appoint someone from the same political
I
party?
took that, it's not there.
Because, you may not get someone that wants to
Correct,
be appointed from a certain body, so.
correct. And also the other
So
one was
it would be restricted,
correct.
so there's no,
If there's a vacancy, anyone is eligible to apply and be considered under the proposal that I have drafted.
and if some of the other things fly, and say we have, we go back to partisan elections and.
Yeah.
If it's 3-2 on the council, you could probably expect,
They can,
Interview.
they can interview whoever they want, they can vote for whoever they want. Again, I don't think we should be precluding anybody.
Yeah.
And also, I also am thinking independence.
Yeah.
In both ways, if the person who was vacating the office was independent, well, now do we have to find an independent, or is it open to everybody?
Yeah.
Or vice versa, if you're an independent, could you fill it? I didn't want to open that can of worms,
That's kind of like disenfranchising stuff, another person, so.
so.
I mean,
any-
in general, because, it's always nice to have like an intent and purpose of this whole thing. We talked about it a lot, but it's intent and purpose, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of minimize the number of
Minimize the
special elections.
minimize special elections and minimize time in which there's a vacancy, which an unrepresented district on each one. So we had 5 months on the school committee, and I believe it was the same for the town council last year when we had a vacancy there. With this proposal, at most, it's a month. We're like, well, unless they're dead by the end, I don't want to go down that. But it's supposed to be, they fill it in a month.
They could do it within 30 days if they're trying on the spot.
Yeah.
And
So.
to me, it's like, it just it eliminates disruption,
Correct.
really. So it's nice to have that statement up front of this whole thing. Because and I'm sure they'll agree. I mean, I think they're 100% on board with this, I imagine. Should be good, flying through flying colors.
Other feedback from anybody before I?
That's it.
No, it's good.
And
So-
I also added your other stuff a little further down. If you want, we can talk about it
Well,
now.
let me just, for this one, I would like to make a motion that we forward this proposal to the town council and ask for their feedback on it as well. See if they do, we're in the right realm for what they would expect.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, so that's under filling vacancies. And then there's. some
Can I-
other stuff
Can I just
that-
ask one question?
Yep.
When you envision this change from the town clerk's perspective, so a vacancy occurs and with a 30-day limitation, how long would you want to advertise this vacancy before the council has a chance to appoint people? I'm just thinking that the 30 days, I totally get wanting to replace someone very quickly. However, I think it also should probably be open for a period of time for people to apply for the vacancy. I don't know what you guys thoughts are on that process.
I think my thought was probably a week or so. That was what I had, like, once the resignation is accepted, I don't know what the actual, you would know the procedure of that, that would basically, when you accept it, that would probably be a week to post it. And then you've got 3 weeks to consider whoever goes from there.
So under Title 17, if there's.
If
a
there's more than,
vacancy-
yeah,
If there's a vacancy, there's a set amount of days, right? I'm not sure what that amount is, but it's probably better than 60 days. So what you want to do.
that's for the election.
Right, but what you want to do is you want to give the council the authority to appoint someone to that position,
Preferably as soon as possible.
all right?
Now, there's a better way of,
So that.
No,
so that-
I agree, Ted. I don't know if, saying that they have to fill it by 30 days is,
So not
or am I
having
not?
restrictions,
Okay.
if it takes 35 days or 40
Okay.
days or 60 days. That they have,
Okay.
essentially what you're giving them permission by changing the charter and public vote to do is that they can appoint someone to fill a vacancy within that time frame
Yeah.
before having to call election.
right, I
Is it shall or may?
believe I wrote shall. I can change it to may, but I don't want to put may in a timeline, that goes against it.
Okay. There's a motion on the floor.
I seconded it.
That's seconded.
Okay, motion made and seconded, all in favor?
All right,
I
Chair votes aye. And that one can go,
go to the council, we'll see what they say, and we can
And-
tweak it from
and-
there, if they,
right,
you know, I'll.
But just even,
there's one right here.
No,
So that's-
no, that's different. This was from last week's. handout, so.
I didn't get one last week. I wasn't here.
Sorry.
1, 2, any other copies?
Okay.
3.
yeah,
Yeah.
get one for Luke behind me too, please. Okay. So. Section 1520 amendment of charter, Bob.
1620 amendment of charter. This is gone back and forth a few times. You should all have a sheet that has the latest notes. And Ray, I apologize. Some of the stuff I did this afternoon just before the meeting, so I did not get you an an updated copy. I'll get that to you when I get home.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Nothing really substantial from what we've been discussing. I did go through and change committee to permission everywhere and things like that. One of the things that came up that I just want to start out with when we were discussing the poll questions concerning this, Mike and Brad, is they had suggested, both of them suggested adding a fourth question: should the Charter Commission proposed changes be placed on the ballot with or without the town's approval? I agree with that. I don't know that I want it in the new language associated with the questions for the new language, which got me thinking, saying maybe what we should do, when Ray started putting some information down on this thing, he broke that off into 15.20A. And maybe what we need to do is break it into two separate sections so that we have 15.2A being the original language that we have now. And then this for the special charter commission being 15.2B, so that they can be treated separately
Okay,
from that, and that question can go in with questions related to the first section as opposed to the other three, which actually relate to the second section. Does that make sense?
makes sense to me, but maybe not somebody else.
It does make sense. I think what's important now is to show the council when you make the presentation, the differences in the sections. The clerk will end up, and we talked about this at one of the other
Right.
meetings, end up renumbering and relettering, and we're just trying to designate differences.
Right. This is, yeah, that's strictly all that is we think this should be one section, this should be another section. You could do 15.21 and 15.22, or any other combination that they decide to do it on. It's just to illustrate it. The first part of it is the section we had talked about. With each recommendation, the committee, upon approval of the majority of the town council, be placed upon the ballot. Okay, I think we're all in agreement on that. That's what the question number 4 really deals with. Is that particular aspect of it. So I'd like to get, I think we all want to get that out there. I would just like it separated from the other three.
Sure.
As far as the Comprehensive Charter Review Commission.
Going back to this for one second, do you
Sure.
intend to make a motion on this tonight?
I don't think so, because I think I need to really address the language.
Yeah, because there's gonna be some more language, I think that's gonna be stricken. Which will be after the second sentence. Beginning with the general election in November 2020, no member of the charter review shall serve concurrent appointment. That is going to go away because it disenfranchises people.
Correct.
And there was one other thing in there, I think it's at the bottom, but I just wanted to put that in there because I wasn't sure if you were gonna make a motion to.
No, I'm not making a motion on the entire thing tonight. In fact, I'm kind of leaving 15.2, the first section A. Out of this aspect of it,
Okay,
and there is definitely language cleanup that has to be done for the second section.
that's it.
In addition to that, I would like to get some poll results. And
Yes,
get, before we actually take a vote on it. So you can read the various comments that Ray and I have been going back and forth on. They should be in some kind of general order. It's pretty much what we've been talking about. A special charter commission gets put together for a period of no less than a year, do a thorough review. And then go to the vote, the authorization becomes when the town adopts this, and then it goes to the voter as an up and down vote. The entire charter is the basic gist of it. And I'll work on cleaning up the language on that this week.
so for our audience, both on screen and in the room. We're talking about doing a comprehensive charter review commission. This is the 50th year of this charter. And there were about 15 substantive changes. There were quite a few grammatical changes over the years, but I think the goal would be to make this look more like a constitution straight down the road. Keep the politics out of it, because most of the changes that were made for political reasons. Maybe not all of them, but I think most of them were. And I just wanted the audience to know what we mean by saying a comprehensive charter review, which will be in an odd numbered year, I think.
Convening in an odd year, so it ends in an even.
Yes,
/ election year.
yeah, so. And
And a lot of this is to, make sure that we're in compliance with state law.
because we had some conflict in there.
Yeah, state law, current town practices. There are departments that don't really exist. That Ben is in charge of. Things along those lines, if it's written in there, it's gotta, you should be doing it. If you were to get reviewed by an agency, you're reviewed on what you say you're doing, not and what you do and what your documents tell you to do. And what you're actually doing is what you get reviewed on, and that all needs to be tightened up. As far as the questions, we already talked about the fourth one. So I'll just go with the first one. The first is very simple. Should the Coventry Town Council appoint a special charter commission, perform an extensive review of the home rule charter to ensure compliance with current state rules, regulations, current town processes and procedure, and optimize the charter for future changes, approve or disapprove. If you choose disapprove, that's it. You don't need to answer the following two because you just said no. Question 2, if approved, should the special charter commission be appointed at regular interval or on an as needed basis? Simple, as needed, regular intervals. If it's appointed at regular intervals, how often should this be? 10 years, 25 years, other?
So currently the charter says 5.
Currently, well, the current charter review is 5. But we're proposing a special charter.
Oh,
review
this is for
commission.
the special. Yes.
Yeah, and we talked about 10, 25 as needed, let's see what the voters want to think about it.
With question 3, I was thinking about this a little bit after. Having 10, 25 and other, It doesn't give it's a very few options, right? And it's kind of anchored, either 10 or 25. What's the other? Could be 12, could be 100. Does it make sense just to have just blank, fill in the blank, how many years? And it could just give us a
10,
kind of a better
25, and
window.
50.
Yeah, well, I think 10 to 25 are gonna anchor somebody as like, those are the extremes, right? 10 is really early, 25 is a long time where, you know,
If you left it blank, it could be the 50 or 15.
Yeah.
6.5.
Just kinda-
37.
yeah, just thinking out loud,
Yeah.
I almost feel like if we're gonna have 10, 25, then we should have 5, 10, 15, 25, 20, 25, 30, and actually like,
10, 20, 30, 40, 50, something.
and then the other. I think having just two options with other, we're anchoring them.
Well, one of the comments that I did make on this, on it, that I was thinking about this afternoon, is that if the purpose of this special review commission is to go through and tighten everything up. You know, if they go through and do a thorough job and a competent job, do you need to do it every 10 years? Do you need to do it every 25 years? The better it's done, the
Less
longer
likely.
the interval can be.
I have a suggestion.
Hmm.
On question 1, should we include in there the age of the charter that we're currently dealing with? In other words, you know, I said that it's, you know, it's 50 years old. Should that be in there? Should the 1972 charter be reviewed? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm thinking
Right.
like you're thinking.
Yep.
There's
So
the public, if the public goes in there, so let's say our 200 plus people who've been voting so far, go back to look for more questions. A lot of the first questions are gonna be like, what is the charter? Why do you need a special charter commission? If you say the age and maybe a link to the charter with a sentence saying what it does, it's pretty
Mhm.
significant. Then they can go, oh, got it. I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know, then you can get into these questions because a lot of people don't have
Does that
any idea.
sound logical, Bob?
it does, I'm just thinking the word, so something like current charter.
Should the Coventry Town Charter
Is now-
adopted in
Extensive review of the
1972.
1972
Yeah.
Home Rule Charter.
Okay,
So
so.
if you did that, then
Run that-
people
run
would
that one
figure
again.
out that, oh, it's 50 years old. And
It's been updated a bit. We've
Yeah.
added some things,
but
but
there have been changes on the state level that affect cities and towns too.
we
So
don't want to make it think it's been the same for 50 years. That would not be good.
Okay, so I just wanna get the phrasing. I like the idea. 'Cause I think that's a good idea. So. I'll put it in there. I mean, I can work on that.
That would be real helpful. Then it rolls along pretty nicely, I think.
The current home rule charter was first adopted in 1972. Just a little bit more explanation as to why this is being done or why it's being
Yeah.
suggested and recommended.
It needs,
Yeah,
we can-
without bulking out the question too much.
we can use links to look at the things.
can
to
we,
Charters on the website.
do you think you can get this done quickly? So
Yeah.
we can get that out there?
Yeah.
And I do like question 4. We had talked about bypassing the council and having the charter questions go directly to the voter. I'm not sure how the council would feel about that. They might think that we're stepping on their toes or something.
Well, that
but-
was my concern on it, and I can see if I was in their position, I might. Because that's power that they have and would be.
And it
suggesting
was-
Taking
that.
it away.
And it was the town of Westerly, was it, that
Westerly,
has sponsors?
Town of Westerly actually has 3 options to getting charter questions on the ballot. One is by the town council, second is by a charter commission, which goes directly to the ballot, and the third is actually by an individual petition. I can't remember what the threshold of how many signatures I needed, but you could simply circulate a petition to get a question on the ballot in Westerly.
And actually, that's substantiated by the document that I handed out as far as the charter commit on the model charter. That's one of the provisions that's in that they recommend. Currently, in what I'm gonna call section B of this, there is no mention of the town having to approve it. Which is one of the reasons why I want that question separate from it. I think that question definitely applies to section A, But it currently is not written, that issue is not written into section B.
So the other thought is this, so 1972. The Charter Commission handed their charter to the sitting town council. Did they vote on it or did they just adopt it? Because it's what the charter review that this is what it's gonna be. I'm gonna read the minutes for that and see what they did, because I think that's kind of
Because that
interesting.
amendment on there is, that's an amendment that has that review. So that was added after the charter.
No, I'm talking about the original Charter Commission in
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
1970, all right?
Yeah.
That submitted, you know,
Mhm.
their findings to the council. Did they vote on it or was it just adopted by, this is what the charter is going to be?
Hmm.
So I'm gonna check into that.
That'd be
I think that'll be
interesting.
interesting.
Should question 4, instead of approve, disapprove, with or with, should just say with or without?
Yeah, I was gonna mention that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
if you
with or
read the
without.
question, it's not an approve or disapprove.
Well,
And if we
the
wanted
charter
to,
proposed change to be placed on the ballot.
With or without.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
If it was just
If
with.
it was
the
with,
town council.
And if-
just without, yeah.
and if we
I
wanted
wanted
to,
my cake and I wanted to eat it too.
if we wanted to differentiate it from the special charter language, we could add in, should the regular charter commission, parentheses, every 5th year, proposed changes be placed on the ballot. I don't know if that's enough or if it would confuse
The
people.
existing charter review commission process or something.
I'm just throwing it out.
yeah,
Because I know you said you wanted to keep it separate from the first 3.
If we-
I think you would need to ask the entire question. You can't imply or expect people to understand it. I think you would have to say, shall future charter review commissions have the authority to place their recommendations directly on the ballot without town council review?
I wouldn't add without town council review. I would
Well,
just
that's how
add.
it is now, and
Yeah.
you have to say that.
You have to,
That in
you have to
order to-
explain what's being different.
Yeah.
So,
Right. you need to know what's going on currently.
And I hope the town council doesn't see this as we're trying to take away.
Yeah,
power. The
I have that
whole-
question too.
the whole purpose here, and the reason why I'm for it is, I don't want us to have 6 months of work in. And
He's saying, thank you, have a
Thank
nice.
you.
and their whole
Nothing.
intention was not
No.
to take anything that we propose seriously. And
We're,
it's just-
we formed the committee because we had to, but we have go meet for every week.
I don't
but we're
want this
not gonna do
committee
it,
just
yeah.
to be a formality,
Right.
which it could be if they just shoot
Yeah.
down everything we recommend.
It's a two-edged sword. They're the gatekeepers of the.
Yeah.
Yep.
And yet, to go around the gatekeepers. And it goes both ways.
Well, and my thought on this, on the special charter is not so much that it's going around the gatekeepers so much, is that if this is approved and put forward, that's already been the authorization. They have already authorized this to be done, and so the results should go directly to the ballot. Is the town council going to take a year to go through everything? They're not going to want to do that or to do that type of thing. They're going to want to review it, get updates, and have input in the workshops, but you know, at that point, it should be an agreement that there should be an agreement already between the town council and the charter, and the special charter review commission. At that point, it goes to the voter and the voter makes the decision.
Your perspective depends on where you sit. That's what my. political
That's why I
science
sit here all the
teaches
time.
about.
That's why I always sit over here. I like this perspective. It's sailing ships, it's everything.
Okay,
That's basically on that. I'll review these, clean up the language on this. I'll hopefully get this done tomorrow. And
Are
I'll
we
have this
appro-
for next meeting.
Are we approving these to go forward, these questions into the,
No, I
Yeah.
need to.
are we gonna see them again?
Gonna see them again.
Okay, good. I have the same sensitivity Mike has in question 4. Don't want to undermine everything else.
get a
we're doing.
kick out
One
of
question.
how everybody writes things in their own legislative form, so I'm just used to seeing the things
Oh, we've got about 6
in the
different.
General Assembly with the,
with the
you
strike
know, the red
throughs.
strikeout and the blue
Yeah.
underline. So. So is that where we're going? You're gonna work on those questions
I will look on those questions.
And-
Get copies out
and
within 24 hours, hopefully.
do you want to approve what he puts on the questions and go for it?
Yeah,
comfortable with
I'm
it.
okay with that.
Is there a motion to send Bob's amended questions to the manager to go on poll?
I mean, I'll like taking a look at them before they
Second?
go out.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
What's your?
I have a question, yeah.
No,
We're just gonna adjust these questions without seeing them, and they're just gonna go into the out to the public.
Well.
I have no problem working on these things, getting them out and receiving feedback in.
So,
Except for
so
the,
a
except
simple
for,
way is, he sends the questions to me, I can send them back out to the Charter Review Commission, and if no one has any objections to them
Okay.
going out, I'll
Right.
just post them.
Want to do that, Jim?
Yes, please.
Let's
that would make
have,
me feel more comfortable as
let's
well.
Yeah,
have
okay.
Yeah, I think
a
so.
backstop.
Well, we're starting to get a lot of people out there, so
If I don't hear from anybody in 48 hours,
sure, no problem.
okay.
And nobody replied.
Reasonable.
Okay,
All right. So with that,
so then that's what we'll do. We'll,
Okay, so
Bob will amend his question.
on question 3, did we want to leave it as is the 1025 and other, or 1025-50? Or,
How about 5, how about
or
10,
we're
20,
doing
30,
5?
45? No, no.
No,
10
no. Now, you gotta limit them, because 200 people, you're gonna have 600 answers.
I think we just need 3 answers there, but 10, 15, 25.
10, 15,
That's it.
25,
Done.
Sure.
Yeah, no more than that. I mean,
does that work?
almost is not.
None of the above?
Seems to me after 10 years, it's not frequent. enough.
Oh, well, this is the first one that's
This
being
is a
done in 50
50-year
years.
review.
I know.
Yeah.
And I don't-
Your review.
And I don't think we've improved on the 1989 Constitution since 1789.
Okay,
Today was actually the anniversary of the day they started vesting.
Yes.
So
okay,
um,
got it.
that one hasn't been rewritten, although some people would like to.
Yeah. True.
Okay, so 10, 15, 25?
There you go.
Remember, whatever increments you write down, you're gonna have to be working on all of them.
I think the charter forbids me from being on it, right?
That's right. That's another question we have to wrestle with. Could be on the.
We're okay
could
with
be on the
2
commission.
and just the little history thing on 1, and then logical language for 4. Okay. Got it.
Okay.
Well,
Sir.
Well, it's gonna be some-
the agenda here. 6.4. Article 7, Town Solicitor. We talked about the possibility of making the town solicitor a town employee as a cost-saving measure. I think what we decided to do was to have the town solicitor appointed by the town council instead of the town manager. Any discussion? No?
No, makes sense.
Do you want to send something to the council to see how they feel about that? What we could do is we could write something that allows the council by ordinance to make the solicitor a town employee. And it shouldn't have any effect on any of the special legal counsel that they use for, like labor attorneys and environmental attorneys. I think there's like 4 different groups.
Because as just recall how we got here. There's language in the charter today that allows the town manager, whether full-time employee or contracted, to hire the solicitor. We want to shift it to the town council and make sure the language is clear. It could be a full-time employee. Is it still option? We want to still leave it flexible?
I would leave
We
it
wanna
flexible
leave
and
it
up to the
flexible.
council,
You never know, but
Yeah, makes sense.
really it should be a political appointment by the town council, because the town solicitor represents the town, not the manager.
and it could be written a few different ways, and
Mhm.
you'll see what happens when we we start to talk about language of certain things pass and certain things don't.
The way it stands right now, it says the town council or the town solicitor who shall be appointed by the town manager with the approval of the town council. So me being just Joe Nobody reads that saying, okay, the town manager can give him a list, but the town council is gonna say which one you hire right now. So what do we want to do? We want to change it from the town manager to the town council?
Yeah, we just want to remove the
That's-
town
that's
manager,
exactly right.
remove any ambiguity. I can't. talk.
Because, I mean, the town manager could appoint someone, but the council still have to approve it, so it's just going around in a circle until the town council
So-
said, yeah, he's okay.
So under that authority. You could. It all depends on how much the town manager wants to keep his job. If he terminates the solicitor, there's no ratification of the termination, but if the council wants to bring the terminated solicitor back, then you're gonna have a problem. Because the town manager won't appoint him.
Yeah. But I mean,
And then it
that's,
becomes you that's on the chapter.
Then I'm on whoever the town manager is. I just don't think, I think that should be a political appointment, just like the town. The town council appoints the town manager, the town council appoints the solicitor, end of story.
So,
yeah, so we should just take out the town
You could just take out the town manager, just strike out.
Yeah,
There shall be a town solicitor who shall be appointed.
By the town council. Yeah,
That's it.
to serve at the pleasure of the council.
Bless you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Of the town council.
we have
Sorry, I
somebody,
thought it was something-
language, I'll volunteer for that one.
It's just strike out.
Yeah,
I wonder.
but maybe send something to them and our feelings are for this reason that it might be more advantageous to have the solicitor as the town employees, the day-to-day stuff.
Right.
That would be commentary for your. Behind the record.
Yeah. As Mikey brought up a good point a couple of weeks ago, when you said probably, not gonna be any lack of work for him, right? With the town this size, because we continue to grow.
And if there is a lack of work, then it's a proactive position.
We have a problem with lack of employees, not a lack of work.
It's true.
Yep. Okay. Section 260, Article 3, Fire Department. Section 1202, Functions, Discussion and Action. Mike.
So, I passed them on last year, sure if you saw it, it's, my particular formatting, let's say proposed changes to section 12 on the top. Ray, you should have this,
Hey,
Scott,
you know what,
Sarah.
I'll be bringing that up.
Email. So what I did was I just looked at section 12 and then I worked with Mr. Ainsworth through email on making some proposed changes in the spirit of creating a municipal fire department. So section 12, in section 12 of the charter, there's a few sections that I would touch on, sections 12.02, 03, 12, 15, and 16 and 38. Do you guys want to just take a minute and read through it? Sure. Pretty much what it does in the first section is it sets a deadline to create a municipal fire department. Put in June 1st of 2023. Assuming, this goes to vote with this fall or whatnot, it gives about maybe 9 months to make it happen.
July 1 is the first day of the fiscal year. So
Okay.
June 1, you'd be in a fiscal year where there's no budget for anything.
And so maybe July 1 makes more sense. Perfect. And the whole premise of having a date on there, it's like we were chatting about before, is we give them the town 4 years to do this,
It'll
or
take
4
4
months, they'll take four years to do it, and we're not in a position where I think time is on our side with fire service. So I think it's important to have some date in there, so that date is obviously can be considered obviously for change. And then through the other sections of 12, just some small additions to kind of support the municipal fire department as their oppositions. There are other sections in there to support the municipal police departments. We kind of mirrored that. So, yeah, that's kind of a.
And our poll shows it's a 86.9%. 86.7%. Approval rating from our poll. So I think it's pretty clear what the public want. There's just been so much You know,
Uncertainty?
uncertainty is probably one of the better words. You know, we'll find out more tomorrow because I believe Central Coventry has a meeting tomorrow.
They don't cancel them again.
And so, yeah, obviously, we have the lack of uncertainty, and we also have a great disparity in actually services that that you can receive in the town, depending on what district you live in. I wish I thought to print it out, but I didn't, but the actual disparity in buy tax rate is not that large. It's, I think it's. within the-
240, 220, 190, 196, 193.
Yeah, so it's, you know, it's not like,
They're all within the $2
Yeah.
range.
it's not like 20.
And that was the
15
reason I was asking you for that. The assessed property value of the town to see, you know, what say they say they incorporate or they decide that, you know, what they're gonna work off with the fire department's, you know, existing budgets until they start this. You know, you could come out and say that, you know, a $2.50 tax rate will generate $14 million, we'll say. So I don't know what the number is, but you know, it's not like the money that's there is gonna go away. It's gonna continue to come in. It just comes into the town instead of the fire districts. Should some of these old laws kick in, you know, we're not sure. May go to court, don't know. But the town is responsible for fire and rescue services in this town, and it's in, and that's not part of the old language. That is 1202 in the charter. So I'm pretty sure they're on the quiet side, but I'm pretty sure they're concerned about it. They have reason to be, so, you know, we'll see how that goes. So if you can send me that number, Ben, maybe tomorrow, I'd appreciate it. And just, you know, out of curiosity's sake.
One of the problems we're having is we have a new software and we're trying to run our tax rolls to get our rate for next year.
Mhm.
And there's all kinds of glitches. We've been
Oh.
fighting and battling the service provider
Whatever happens.
for 6 weeks, and I'll get you what I can.
All I need is
If it's not the
the
updated
property
one,
is
it'll be last year.
assessed property value of, and it will be, well, it will be, you know, as of December 31st of last year, that's what tax rates are gonna be set on, but are we gonna have a full reval right now, or
That's
statistical?
that's in process. for next year.
Statistical or?
No. I believe it's a full reval year.
Because they're ringing on doorbells, I saw that today,
Oh, interesting.
so,
That's very interesting.
so.
Given the pricing, home prices these days. Yeah,
Okay,
that could
Ray
be-
had his hand
Curiosity,
up.
do you know if
That would
there's
be interesting.
any mapping of the various fire districts?
Yeah.
Something on the GIS?
Mhm.
Okay.
right,
I just had a question, and it might be for the town manager. In the sections that were in there for police, 1216, it talks about reserves, volunteers, and special policemen. I guess they don't have any police women, but
We do.
my wife, right, it's outdated language, but we don't have, the town doesn't have any reserves or volunteers or specials, is that correct?
No, we do.
I know they have the traffic, the
That's all I
retired
need,
people that do the
details.
traffic.
You know, they've been used in the past. I think it's under the chief's discretion, and with less volunteerism now, we don't have an active corps, but I know like with police cadet programs, those have come and gone. There have been, you know, like explorer troops and that sort of thing, so. I don't know that we have any active reserves or volunteers, but I'd have to talk to the chief about that.
I thought that the trust did away with, or wanted cities and towns to do away with that. That's the only reason I bring it up.
Well, maybe doing away with it in a format where they'd be actually doing things that would put them in an insurable risk. But we have volunteers in other departments, and there's nothing to prevent people from volunteering in the police department. Maybe just they can't do a stakeout or carry a gun and drive a car. I don't know.
Yeah, I can get into that a little bit. So there was a court case when Warwick used to have reserve police officers, and they used to have them when Rocky Point was around. And what had happened was there was a fight, and one of the reserve officers got pushed by somebody. So they arrested the person and they charged him with assault on a police officer. So when it went to court, the defense attorney pulled up the Rhode Island State law book and said, "Your Honor, they charged my client with assault of a police officer. This person is not a police officer. He never graduated to be a police officer around." He pointed out, you had to graduate from one of the 3 municipal academies or the state police academy. Excuse me, it was the Providence Police Academy, the State Police Academy, or the Municipal Police Academy. If you do not graduate from one of those academies, you are not a licensed, registered, or viewed as a police officer in the state of Rhode Island. So the charges were dismissed and was thrown out. And then since then, a lot of the cities and towns have gotten rid of their reserve police officers because they were not, like you said, Ben, insurable. So I guess they could have reserve officers if they have graduated from a police academy in the past and they were retired, and they can be subject to that. But I know that at that point, Warwick got rid of all their reserve officers, and so did Woonsocket and Providence. Other states do a certain thing, is they have their own little academy, and they could probably go to the legislature to save money, where some of these cities and towns, they get an influx of people. They're in Block Island, should probably think of this, when they get a lot of tourists that come in and stuff like that, and they hold their own academy throughout the year and get the hours and credentials in to have reserve officers who do have police powers and who can be backed up by the cities and towns insurance to make sure they have police protection, enough of it during the peak times. So that's just a little.
Well, that's a really good point, because then clearly the content in the charter is antiquated to what has progressed over time. But there's nothing to prevent a different definition of reserve officer from reappearing in the future, maybe not with the same duties that they once had, but
Yeah,
they can be
exactly.
different.
They could do traffic duty or stuff like that, but I don't think when it comes to like arrest powers or police powers, they wouldn't have any sway over that, because if they tried to do that and then they did, and then someone sued the town, the insurance company that does the insurance, the bonds, the cities and towns, this Coventry should be like, we're not paying that. We're not gonna.
The reserve officers I've worked with have never had police powers to make an arrest. They can assist an officer. They're usually escorted by an officer. They can do certain things, but it's very, very limited because you're not a sworn post certified.
Yeah.
So.
Right. A few weeks ago, we had the police chief sent us a little bit of a handout, saying had to do with that emergency declaration and the curfew and stuff that happened in 2000 that Mr. Meek brought up, and we had asked the police chief what he thought about it, and he's he told us why it's done that way, and we should probably add maybe a succession clause when if the manager's not around, it'll be the public safety director. If it's not him, the council president, and so forth. Should we have Ben send an email over to the chief and ask him what he thinks may be outdated as it relates to that? Because if it's becomes a legal issue where someone gets injured under the employ of the town and is not certified, he may have concern about that.
Yeah, I mean,
all department directors were given input. So in the recommendations of things to look at, everything was in there that the chief had concerns about. So that was in your starting document as things to look at. I don't know.
To Scott's point, it is changing constantly because they can't get enough police officers to fill vacancies. So it's a lot easier to keep your certification now or to retain it or get it back through the post. But I mean, I just don't know. And maybe it's not outdated. I just don't want to mirror it in the fire language if if it's outdated in the police language. That was my
It's worth
concern.
asking the chief that much, yeah.
And Ray, I did, I thought you were gonna be here, but I did remove it in my proposed language, that last.
Okay.
The reserves or whatnot.
Cool,
Because I think
thank
it is, rather than, it could always be added after the fact.
Or it doesn't need to be in the charter at all.
It doesn't mean that at
There's
all.
nothing stopping the chief from using volunteers.
Okay,
Um,
Another reason for an extensive charter review.
Yes.
yep,
Yeah.
okay, 2.01 election law, Ted.
So I'll do this one quickly. Sarah and Scott, I apologize that I didn't get this emailed out to you, but I will do so later. Basically just to follow up on switching back to partisan elections. And I've gone over it with Ray. I looked at other charters and other towns that are doing the partisan system as we used to have. And basically, their charters just simply have a clause that is the same as the first part of 2.01 for ours, which says the provisions of the Constitution and general laws of the state of Rhode Island now or hereafter in effect pertaining to elections, special, general, and primary shall govern all town elections so far as they may be applicable. What I did for everything after that in sections 2.01 that refers to party affiliation, basically says we're not going to have it. 2.07, which says all municipal elections will be nonpartisan, and 2.09, which was our system of primaries, since we weren't having partisan primaries, struck all that out. I did not put any language to replace it with, nothing to specifically say it is partisan, so basically we would follow the Rhode Island state law on elections. Now, I will hold off if on moving this forward, also you two can take a look at it and also see if we want to add any clauses for special town elections, as we were talking about earlier, budget referendums, or anything that falls outside of the state scope that we want to have covered here.
Mhm.
So,
I did the same exact thing when I did my language. And I sent it to Ray. But I did move, what I did do is I took the whole entire chapter or the whole entire section.
yep,
I just had to renumber one of the sections from 208.
from 8 to 7, yep. I was thinking about,
207,
yeah.
so it's exactly the same thing. Personally, I think that this was a voter suppression move. And it's just the way that I feel about it. I was opposed to it when they did it. And they did it saying that basically they didn't want to have somebody have an R next to their name. So that's what it was. It was, if you can't get elected with an R next to your name, you just take out the whole thing. So that's what it all boiled down to. And what did it cause? It caused resignations. It caused people switching, changing over from one side of the town, say from municipal to school, or from school to municipal. I think that there was 3 resignations maybe, because it's a long term. And now you're having a hard time getting candidates. I was really surprised that they had candidates in District 1 school committee. But I think probably the local town committee, Democrat, Republican probably has something to do with that. But I was glad that they had some. They actually had over 450 voters, I think, out there. I was shocked. So, but I think that this was to suppress the vote, and my opinion. And it costs money. Somebody leaves office, get someone that runs for office and quits, 3 months later, it becomes a huge problem. And then when you're trying to fill a seat for 3.5 years, nobody's gonna commit to it. So that's my thought on that. And then you had another.
that was all 3 of them. I did them.
Oh, you did all three of them.
They all tied together. but
Yeah.
First it was 2, then I realized we had 3, so I wanted to make sure they were all properly listed, so.
Great. New business, polling questions, results, additions, and continuation. Did everybody get a copy of the new results?
Yep.
From Ted today, Ben today? It looks like it's the same trend. It seems like people favor townwide fire department. They favor having a mayor. They favor having 7 council seats, which would probably mean that we would have to go to 7 school committee seats. I did speak with Kathy Patno the other night. And her thoughts were, oh, it would be great if 2 of them were were
The same.
no, were
Large.
at large. I said, well, the data shows us that they're not interested in at large, but they are interested in 7 seats.
I mean, I'm looking at the data right now. It's redistricting with 7 equal districts, 34.9, keeping 5 and 2 year terms, addition of 2 at large is 34.9. It's pretty close. That's not that different.
So
But the
at
2 at
large-
large was definitely,
It's okay. They picked up some votes here. It's got a little, 2 pies are getting a little closer.
Mhm. So. I was toying around over the last few days with language of mayor and whether we want to have a powerful mayor or just an administrative mayor.
I don't know, Westport tried a mayor a few years ago and it didn't work well for them.
Well,
Oh, is that right?
they had it, I think it was for
6 years,
6
I
years.
think.
It was Michael Dake first, and then it was
Michael Vick for
terms.
2 terms and then 1 more and that was it. Scored.
that doesn't mean that it won't work in this.
I don't know what the circumstances were for it.
Yeah.
Why,
So under the polling question, Bob, you're gonna
I will get those
do this stuff,
hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow.
but I think it's a good indication, and the more questions we put out there, I think the more, people may feel strongly about, we'll say, 7, to say another thing, we'll say the special charter review, and if people feel strongly, yeah, I like that idea, and they may want to come in and take the poll, they may hop in and look at the other questions too.
I think it's how we've
So
been picking up
I
more.
think it's data, I think it's good. And we should continue with it. And so sometime maybe in the next 24 to 48 hours, we may have Fox questions and Ben can put them on the
So I'll get them to you. You'll get them out to everybody 48 hours, so by the weekend, basically.
thing.
Gotta be done before I open the pool.
Okay.
Okay.
I got grandkids waiting.
Public comment. Is there anyone that has any public comment?
No public here.
You're public.
The town public, I'll raise my hand.
There you go.
Sure. Make it worth the trip. No, first thing I'd say is, well, Luke Murray, 121 Hill Farm Camp Road. Those who know me, I was on the school committee and I've been in those sweaty gyms voting. So I appreciate the work you put into this. I know that my mother was on the previous charter review committee and the council didn't adopt one thing. That they, but it's a process, so I get it. I was here I'll start off what I came to present, which really was just a suggestion, and I hope you maybe take it. This one's an awkward one for the town manager to present, I guess I'm maybe presenting on his behalf if he agrees with me, if not, then oh well. So some may know that I'm the assistant town manager for South Kingstown. One of the things that's very difficult right now is hiring. And I just poached Matt Moynihan out of Block Island. And I poached a finance director out of Smithfield to come down to SK in the past 2 days. One of the enticing things to be able to do that is our non-political, very separate power of government in SK, in addition to compensation, which is pretty good on state average. That is partly because we have a charter provision that specifically says that the town council cannot directly contact department heads or staff. Everything flows to the town manager. I'll read you the provision. I'll pull it up real quick.
I believe that's in there.
That's on our charter.
It is?
That's in our.
Okay. Is it used? Because I see, it seems,
Policing that in any town in any state is always a challenge.
so here's
Some
what I would.
councils respect it, some don't.
Right. So here's what my other suggestion is, if it's not being held to, there should be some sort of way to enforce it. I've worked my way through government. I've been in roles where I worked for the city of Warwick for 4 years. There wasn't a day that went by a council member didn't contact me. And when you're put in the situation to be, one council member wants one thing and another council member wants another, and you're put in the awkward position to say, go to the mayor. Or I'll do it, but I'll do it this way, and then the other one's yelling at you because you did it that way. It is very difficult to operate. And so a suggestion is put some teeth into it however you can to make them adhere to that, because it is very disruptive. The 5 members of council right now need to work as a unit. That's why they pass resolutions. And it's unfair to the town manager to not force them to work as that unit. That's why town manager style of government works. So,
Is that ordinance or is that in the charter?
and that's the other thing. I didn't know if it was ordinance.
It's in the charter.
No, it's in the, it's in the charter, because that's something Jamie LeBlanc wanted changed. That was on one of his things that he wanted to do. One of his changes he had in his original paperwork that they sent out in the beginning. That was one of the things he wanted to be worked on, that town council members could contact division head, department heads to talk to them on this about different issues.
So this comes down to a very nuanced situation, because in the interest of free-flowing information, even though I've been in several other positions where they were the very strict, the town council shall not speak to staff rules, I've always relaxed it to say, I don't want to be the bottleneck for the free flow of information. So all directors are perfectly permitted to talk to the town council and share information and answer questions. But the rub always comes down to my ground rules for the management team, the directors, is that if they direct you to do something, put something on an agenda, fill a pothole on a certain street, that has to come back to me. I've also put that on the council that if you want to ask staff to do something, you have to run it through the town manager. Now, if there is a lapse where someone forgets, it's usually over something pretty minor and it's not a big deal and we close the loop and it's fine. Or it's just timing and expedient. But generally I found most councils and directors, the directors they're more fearful of me and preserving their job. So they're usually very good at talking to me. But what you have when it goes amok in terms of putting teeth into it, I can only discipline the directors. I can't discipline the town council. That doesn't work. So, but when a director goes rogue and makes something political and seeks to influence something politically against the town manager, well, they're kind of on their own. And I say they're not under my protection. I can't justify what they do or whether it's for the good or not. I had that happen once and it went very poorly for that director, not because of anything I did, but they embarrassed themselves because they didn't follow my advice. But there's always a tension there between politics and administration. It's classic public administration theory and how much interaction is appropriate between elected officials and staff. If they want to know how many acres of parks we're mowing, then please call the Parks and Rec director. They'll know that. You don't have to go by me. But if you want to have a certain park, more fertilizer and painted lines on the grass and whatever, that might not be something we budgeted, and maybe that's a conversation to have with me. So yeah, it's
I recall that going back to when Rich Kerbell was the town manager here, where, I thought it was a directive, I didn't think it was in the charter that there should be no contact between council members and employees.
I don't remember seeing it, but you can point to the provision. I'll say it's a consideration. I will say, having operated in various positions, I have found it to be disruptive because it starts with harmless inquiries. And then what happens is it tends to lead to enablement. And then it leads to disruption because there's some council members who become more powerful because they have the department members here. And while some information is innocuous, it leads to sort of this tangential power struggle. And then the only people who actually police it, and the ordinance really should be policed among themselves, because if I'm a council member and I'm finding that you're going to the DPW head and asserting your projects over mine, I say, well, this is not how this works.
No. Mhm.
Right, this, it's the same when you sit on school committee, you can't just call the you can't unilaterally just call principals and say, well, I want you to do this. This just doesn't work that way. So I get it. Ben's right. It is a bit of a management issue. It makes it easier to manage if it's clear in charter. Because charter is hard to change. And, it's the governance document. It's a suggestion. You guys can discuss it. The other thing I will say is I appreciate all the time on Jim on the and others on the budget process. 100% agree. It needs to go to a better process. And a council process. SK has already adopted their budget. And as of May 12th, the referendum period's over. So we have certainty right now. I can go to tax. The only thing I will say, and I know somebody here contacted Sue Flynn.
Yeah, that was me.
Okay. She probably told you, if it goes to referendum, you can say that you leave flexibility to do the referendum, but there are clear state required timelines on getting referendum together and how that works is extremely tough. You will not get the tax bills out of that time. Now, we don't work off TANs, tax anticipation notes. I believe Coventry does, because they used to. Maybe not since you've been here. They used to work off TANs, because you used to have to do a vote for, if everyone remembers, you'd have to do a vote for the budget, and then you have to do a vote for the issuance of the TAN. So I don't know how that works administratively for them. That's something Ben can answer in the others, but I just want to iterate that it's not a perfect world. So the budget process does start early. We typically start in December. We issue a schedule for the entire process, which I think you actually copied, because I'm noticing these dates are almost.
Oh, yeah, I've looked at your
All the
schedules.
meetings that I
Yeah,
went
yeah.
to.
Oh, yeah.
And our capital budget starts in October. We do a capital budget process in October up to December, then the capital is folded into this. So it works. I just say, for Ben's side of the table, just make sure you have the bandwidth to do this. In Warwick, it was very easy, right? Town council voted on it. It was
voted
done.
done,
When
yeah.
I was in Boston. council
Attleboro,
voted on
same
it,
thing.
done. So that's all I have to say there. As far as hiring of the solicitor, I agree. I mean, it should be a town council function. If they work for the town council typically. That doesn't preclude another department from getting I do a lot of labor issues. We have a labor attorney. So because they know OJI IOD claims, and that's what I deal with a lot. So, and then I was just taking some notes based on other stuff, but I don't think any of the other items were, as far as political partisan things, I don't really get into that stuff much. I mean, I like having broader representation. I find it very hard these days to get anyone to run in general. As you know, I vacated my seat. Luckily, there were two that came up, but when I ran, quite frankly, I took the seat originally, my first term. There was no one out there. I got called and said, hey, you didn't make state rep. Could you go for this? And then the second time, I remember, is nobody ran against me.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
anything you can do to broaden it up, I think is a good thing. Part of its culture, you're not going to defeat.
Yeah,
it.
we've talked about that a lot. It's important.
Yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity and keep up the good work. I'm not able to attend all these meetings. I want to at least kind of.
No referendum in SK this year. No, nobody
Thank God.
created.
There was one individual who stood up, and the biggest issue in SK right now is schools. We have a very high cost per pupil, and we've gone through a lot of disruptions. So it's mostly on the school side that they want to lower their budget, even though we zero funded them the past 3 years. I don't know what else. You can't do anything else. You can go to a per pupil reduction. So we have one individual who did a referendum 2 years ago, and it was a very difficult, it was very hard on the clerks. Because they run our referendum, so. It is difficult.
Yeah, she expressed the difficulty in the
And we don't. do
difficulty
mail
was the
ballots.
process. Yeah, the
Yeah,
process.
We don't do mail ballots, so just to give you a sense, so you also may want to understand. What would it take if you want to do mail ballots? What is the administrative bandwidth to do that in clause? It's not all, I mean, I can't imagine it's a lot, but not a lot in sometimes at a table. Translates to a lot for a single administrator who, you know, if you're counting on that one, I know, is it Lori who's still, who's
The Board of Canvassers, yeah.
you know, if she's out for any reason, your person to do it, that bandwidth goes away. You don't have anybody, you know, you don't have 3 people deep in a town like this. So I would just make sure that you have the capacity before you hem yourselves into a chart. That's all.
Thanks.
Any further comment?
That section that was being referenced, just so everybody, if you haven't already found it, it's 15.11, non-interference by town council.
Thank you, Earl.
It took me a while to find it, but it is there. You're
I
absolutely right.
knew that there was something in there. But I thought when it first came out, it came out as a directive by the town manager. About anybody in the room, we're all public and we've always said that if we feel we want to say something during public comment, we can. And if not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, motion made and seconded, all in favor.
All right.
We are adjourned.